Fala, Romero. Manda la escopeta, saca la escopeta. Listo.
Okay, I came to Peru in 2001. I had just received a major contract in England to go into corporate sales and was about to start a job, and decided that before I spent 3 years working a 9 to 5 day, I would take one last travel around the world to see what I could learn. So I came with a friend of mine to South America to start in Lima and to travel down to Patagonia and then travel up north to Rio de Janeiro, the Gringo U. And we had 6 months planned of traveling. And when I arrived after 1 month of traveling in Cusco, I began looking for volunteer work. And I ran into a guy who said that there was a project in Manu, and he ran a lodge that did turtle conservation and worked with indigenous people. And my background is in social anthropology, so I was really excited about coming and kind of learning about the Amazon and its people. So I came to a small plot of land run by a Spanish guy called Javier Jimenez. And he had a small bit of land, 50 hectares, and a tourism lodge. And when I arrived, it was just basically a shack with a metal roof. And I spent the next 4.5 months living in Manu, working with the people who worked at his lodge, trying to help improve the lodge and work with tourism. After spending 4.5 months here, I spoke with him about developing a project, because basically everything I had learnt from the local people at the time was that Manu was this amazing potential, not only of biodiversity but culturally, had all this information, and there was no way that it was being expressed and used sustainably. And so I went back to the United Kingdom with a vision to raise some money and come back, and instead of being a person who always says things, I decided to be a person who did things. So I came to Manu in the beginning of 2002 to invest in his lodge and build an education center at his lodge. Unfortunately, while I was away, he made a partnership agreement with another tourism company and kind of left me stranded. So he left me without a possibility to invest. I had raised a little bit of money in the UK and in the US, and I took a decision then in July that this was a project I really was interested in, and it was something I really wanted to do. And so I went back and raised a little more money, and in September 2002 I bought Funda Masquitania, which is 643 hectares, and it is actually the neighboring property to where I initially worked. So where I initially worked was a small area which is now my neighbors.
En teoría cada uno es 55 watts, pero que parece que tenemos un pequeño problema con las baterías, entonces está llegando para un computadora el módem y un poco de energía eléctrica para cargar cosas. En el baño hay botes de casi todos los números que se pueden agarrar, pero eso debe ser seco. Sí, ahora está seco. ¿Ya has terminado? Sí. Pero sí lo estás utilizando. No, ya terminé. Ah, para trabajar ese día, claro. Ahora vas a hacer un pastel de doble. ¡Oh! ¡Qué bueno, qué bueno! Ok. Claro, que digas ahora.
Tomás es él vive es de Chariabamba, de los Andes, y ha venido a Salvación a estudiar en el Instituto Turismo. Y hace unos días nomás que se ha graduado como guía de turistas. Y él está haciendo acá trabajando como asistente de cocina porque quiere aprender a ser cocinero, quiere ser un chef.
Esa es la masa para un pastel de... Va a ser un pastel de brócoli. Es propiamente una masa para el pastel, ¿no?
Con una capacidad, a full capacidad de 21 personas todos los días. Entonces, esa es más o menos la capacidad que tenemos del pozo séptico. Y ahora está sellado con brea, entonces está en un proceso anaeróbico de descomposición. Como les explicaba, tiene 3 pozos que se van filtrando de uno a otro, ¿no? Con diferentes tipos de gravilla, diferentes diámetros de gravilla, para que al final pasen al pozo del fondo, y el pozo del fondo tiene unos huecos donde se filtra el agua hacia afuera. Entonces esta agua es rica en nutrientes, y ahí lo que te explicaba Queen era que la idea es plantar estas heliconias, plantas que tienen flores y atraen también polinizadores y insectos, ¿no? Que son muy importantes para el bosque, y también tener la posibilidad de contar con flores frescas, ¿no?
Sí,
¿Tiene 6 horas qué capacidad tiene?
Este tiene
Galones,
litros.
galones, no sé qué usa.
No, es de litros.
Manejo
Los pequeños son 1100 cada uno. El grande creo que es 3. Son como 5000 litros.
Desde 300 galones. Un
Sí,
galón
sí, ya, pero no es que se un galón, hay dos. No quieres desviar todo de ahí, quieres dejar que siempre está corriendo por ahí, entonces eso lo hacemos con Manu. Cuando vuelves con Manu. Otra idea es de poner un bicicleta para siempre quieren gimnasio aquí, lo ponemos en bicicleta.
Personalmente, ¿estás satisfecho a estas alturas de haber venido acá y de los resultados de tu trabajo?
Yeah.
Como sensación personal.
Yes, I think it's been an incredible experience. I've learnt a lot. I have a lot more to learn. I think the thing with working in the rainforest is that there's always more things to learn, and every day you learn something, you find out how much more you don't know, and so it's a constant challenge. But I think that in the 6 years now that I've been here, I've managed to work with some amazing people, and I've managed to learn a lot. And I think what the organization is now able to do, and the opportunities it can give, it's really going in the right direction. I think we still have a lot of work to do, but yeah, I'm very happy now. And it's an exciting time as well, because this is really our second year of operations, so there's so much left still to do.
Si este camino sigue a la orilla del río más o menos por 5 kilómetros. Atalaya es una palabra.
Mencionaste que había accidentes que afectaban el ecosistema acá, que eran cosas como...
Well, Manu has a long history. Manu has been exploited for rubber, for timber, and now its main market here is tourism. And during the last 6 years that I've been here, studies done showing burnings and tracks of burnings and environmental damage caused by slash and burn agriculture here have increased over 10%. So the area is, because as the population is growing, more and more pressure is being put on the natural resources, and because none of the techniques that are being kind of promoted really have a sustainable future, most of what's happening is creating these incredible centered populations that deplete the resources in their area, and then they have to expand. And so you're having a lot more pressure on the naturally protected areas like the Manu National Park and stuff. And part of the problem is that I think a lot of what is conceived here, Peru, unfortunately, and especially places like Salvacion where we were, the information that arrives to us in terms of how to manage the rainforest is so late, and it's out of date. It's already, I mean, you look at projects that are arriving with techniques that were tried and tested in the 90s and failed, but they arrive here in 2000 and we still try them. So that's one of the biggest problems, is that whilst at the same time there is this wealth of resource, the information that actually makes it through is not always up to date. So you have this whole problem, you have a lot of monoculture which came through and destroyed areas, and again now with what's happening with the sugarcane, is this impulsion. People are beginning to look at different alternatives to do that. And also we've seen, because of the Interoceanica, as you look at things, the idea of ganaderías and large-scale ranching and farming here is now beginning to pick up, which means obviously a lot more destruction of rainforest for land.
Cuando tú dices que las poblaciones aumentan, ¿te refieres a la población indígena o los pueblos cercanos?
Well, los dos, because both in reality, because what you have is local populations are growing naturally.
Why? Because they are
Because they're more
more-
concentrated now. I mean, the difference between hunter-gatherer societies that are always moving and migrating and a fixed society that has a permanent base and has an agricultural feel is it allows it to grow, in theory, a lot quicker. What happens is generally it grows much faster than it can maintain, and that's why you end up with the larger kind of term destruction, because it suddenly gets to a point where it actually does have an impact and it's moving too fast. But the local populations are also growing. I mean, I always remember coming down on the bus and arriving at Pilcopata, and there were 20 guys who all got off the bus with chainsaws, who were coming because they heard that the area was going to be great for timber, and they were all, getting off the bus looking for areas of land to buy to exploit for timber. And that's been happening a lot recently. I think Salvacion has even done a new urban development. I mean, the town has grown tremendously from 10 years ago. It's, I couldn't give exact numbers, but you can physically see that the infrastructure is growing, and there's certainly a lot more people now.
¿Qué idea tienes acerca de la cooperación internacional para preservación de la naturaleza? ¿Qué piensas acerca de la cooperación internacional?
Well, I think Manu has had its experiences with international cooperation. We've had the European Union work with the Peruvian government in a project called Pro Manu here, and the reality is, I think that international cooperation is a must. It has to happen, but I think there's certain ways it needs to be structured so that it has an integral and contextual feel. I think that there's a lot of problems with local management, and I think there's also a lot of problems with capacity of local people, and I think that there's a lot of international corporations that come in and do very short staying projects, and there is no real longevity and vision. And if there is, it is generally managed by institutions that are so large that they end up, the actual work that they're doing locally gets diluted so much that there is no feeling. I think it's very difficult to have international cooperation in an area like Manu unless the local people are really involved. And I think so the way for international cooperation to come in to these areas has got to be more directed at what local people are doing in the local context. But I think that the experience that Manu has already had has proved that it is an enormous support and that it is incredibly beneficial. And obviously areas like this need as much financing and as much resources as they can get, because it is such a fragile environment, and it is unfortunately being endangered not necessarily by malicious intent, but just because of accidental day-to-day living by local populations. So international cooperation certainly will help in the redirection of that, and I think that international cooperation now has a responsibility to talk more about sustainability when we're talking about the Amazon, and to try and help convert the Amazon, which has so much richness of biodiversity and also culturally, to try and convert this into sustainable strategies that have longer term management, that really integrate local people at the forefront of that.
bala, Romeo. Ponte la escopeta, saca la escopeta. Listo.